Okay, so with the release of Linnea's kit, the power hierarchy of Genshin has changed completely. So in this video, we'll be ranking the top 10 teams in the current meta based on team DPS, consistency, and endgame performance. So, starting with number 10, we have Arlecchino. She has fallen off the chart massively. At one point, she was considered one of the strongest teams in the game, and now she's barely entering the top 10. Her current best team is Arlecchino with Nefer, Columbina, and Durin, and that sits around 115,000 DPS. You can also play her overload team with Durin, Chevrus, and Fischl, which is also around 110,000 DPS. But her old hypercarry teams, especially now with Sitlali, or her vape team with Yelan, are way weaker and perform much lower, around 95,000 DPS, and they're just not worth investing into at this point of the game. Her personal damage is nowhere close to the new hypercarry DPS units, and that's the main reason her rank has fallen so hard. And what makes it look even worse is that Arlecchino's best-in-slot hypercarry team with Sitlali, Shilonen, and Bennett is at the same level as a Lauma free-to-play team with Sucrose, Fischl, and Ino. That alone shows how far her personal damage has fallen off. Now, at number 9, we have Navia, returning to the top 10 thanks to Linnea and Lunar Crystallize. She's really been in the spotlight these last few months. First with the release of Durin, then Columbina, Lunar Crystallize, and now Linnea becoming her best-in-slot support. Currently, her best-in-slot team is Navia, Linnea, Columbina, and Nefer. You can call it a wheelchair team, but it is what it is. This team is around 115,000 DPS. You can also replace Nefer with Furina if you want Navia to actually do more personal damage, and you'll lose around 5,000 DPS, but it still remains very strong. And yeah, we've received so many broken supports back-to-back, from Nefer to Lauma, then Durin, Columbina, and now Linnea, so it's expected that most teams are going to turn into wheelchair teams, especially when we're talking about older DPS units. Now at number 8, we have Mualani. Mualani received a small indirect buff, mainly because Durin can now fully take advantage of the new artifact set when played in his black state. Her best team currently is Durin, Sucrose, and Shilonen. Other variations like Mona with Durin or Albedo with Durin also perform solidly. Outside of these setups, she hasn't gained many new teams, since Columbina doesn't synergize particularly well with her. Her second best team replaces Durin with Mavuika. Moving on to number 7, we have Nilou teams, which received massive buffs thanks to Columbina. Her current best team is Lauma, Columbina, and Nahida, dealing roughly 120 to 125,000 DPS. However, this setup lacks sustenance, which is a real problem in actual gameplay. For most players, replacing Nahida with Baiju is more practical. That version sits closer to 115,000 DPS, and it's very comparable to Nefer teams, with the main difference being that you're playing Nilou instead of Nefer. And honestly, Nilou is also one of the best hydro carries right now. Her damage with Lauma and Columbina is just too good at this point. But aside from Pure Bloom, you can actually convert this into a Hyper Bloom setup by swapping Nilou out for Nefer, which can reach around 125,000 DPS. Or you can replace Nefer with Durin for a version variation, which deals roughly 120,000 DPS. That flexibility makes this one of the strongest archetypes in the current meta. Now, before we talk about the other DPS teams, if you're already broke and planning to top up, make sure you use Loot Bar, because they're offering some great discounts for the current banner, and they drop regular offers too. Just use my link below, enter your UID and server, and it should arrive within minutes. Loot Bar is used by millions of players, and it's completely safe for top-ups. Okay, now coming back to the topic. At number 6, we have Varesa. Mainly her overload team with Durin, Chevrus, and Iansan, with correct combos, can touch around 125,000 DPS. You can also replace Durin with Mavuika, which will be roughly 5% worse than Durin in that setup. Varesa can also be played in other team structures, such as Electro-charged with Furina and Xianyun, or in a Lunar charge setup with Columbina, but these teams perform significantly lower than her Overload team. She depends heavily on C6 Chevreuse and C6 Iansan, and can fall around 20,000 DPS lower if you're running C0 Iansan and Chevreuse. For those wondering about the best teams for other Notland DPS units, do check out our dedicated video covering the updated team rankings. Now talking about the top 5 teams in the game. At number 5, we have Skirk. She might feel a bit lower for some people, especially since she fell off a lot with the rise of nod-krai units. Currently, her teams are around 125,000 DPS with Escafir. As said before, she is still one of the most restricted units in the entire game. With the current power creep, it is even more important for you to have Escafir for her. If you don't have Escafir, she can feel almost useless in the current meta, because her damage falls way lower compared to other units. Now at number 4, we have Flins. Currently the best Electro DPS in the game, and one of the strongest overall units. Her best-in-slot team with Nefer, Columbina, and Sucrose easily does around 140,000 DPS. The best thing about Flins is how easy she is to play. Unlike units like Nefer or Mavuika, who can reach similar numbers but suffer heavily from dash cancel execution, it's almost impossible to lose damage with Flins if you know the basics. She's insanely stable, and also one of the most F2P-friendly DPS units in the game. With 4-star supports like Sucrose, Ino, Fischl, Kuki, Boraron, and more, she becomes an insane option for players who need a reliable DPS. Now at number 3, we have Nefer. Currently the best Dendro DPS in the game, dealing her damage primarily through Lunar Bloom. Her best-in-slot team with Lauma, Columbina, and Nahida does around 150,000 DPS. You can even slot in Linnea as the 4th slot, since she provides healing and an elemental mastery buff for Nefer, making her a strong alternative. But Nefer is another unit highly dependent on her dedicated support. In her case, Lauma is almost mandatory to maintain this level of damage. Without Lauma, her best team becomes Nefer, Columbina, Ino, and Nahida, which drops to around 105,000 DPS. That's a 40 to 45,000 DPS loss, which is honestly insane. She can also be difficult to play on mobile, since dash canceling is mandatory to maximize her DPS. And because she scales from Lunar Bloom damage, she doesn't scale from attack, which makes traditional attack buffers almost useless for her. Now at number 2, we have Mavuika. After more than a year, she's finally not sitting at number 1 anymore. Currently, without advanced combos, her best-in-slot team with Sitlali, C6 Iansan, and Bennett touches around 135,000 DPS. With double cancel combos, she can go up to 160,000 DPS. She also has multiple viable teams and is extremely versatile. Unlike many nod-krai DPS units who are restricted to one reaction, Mavuika can be played in Vaporize with Furina, Overload with Durin and Chevreuse, and even mono pyro setups. These teams are slightly weaker, but still strong enough to clear most endgame content. And finally, at number 1, we have Zibai. Zibai was already sitting around 145,000 DPS with Iluga, Goro, and Columbina. Now, with Linnea as her dedicated support, she can reach 175 to 180,000 DPS. That puts her significantly ahead of every other DPS in the game. If you haven't seen Linnea's full kit breakdown, do check out our dedicated video. Right now, Zibai has no competition. She sits comfortably as the best DPS in the game. And unlike Nefer or Mavuika, you don't need complicated combos or execution tricks to maintain her damage. She's insanely stable. Of course, Linnea is still in beta, and considering how broken she currently looks, especially her buffs and personal damage, she might receive some nerfs. But even then, she is simply too strong right now, and almost a must-pull for any Geo DPS account. Now, talking about some other teams that we didn't include, we have Neuvillette teams. Mainly the so-called wheelchair setups with nod-krai units, such as Nefer, Loma, and Columbina in a Hyperbloom setup, or Columbina, Durin, and Loma in a Burgeon variation.
There's also the newly added Lunar Crystallized team with Linnea and Columbina, which still keeps him viable in endgame content, even though his traditional hypercarry teams have fallen much lower in the rankings. Other DPS units like Kinich and Chaska were also very close to getting a spot in the top 10. And it's honestly sad that the newest DPS, Varka, still couldn't make the top 10, but that might change with future releases. Let me know if I missed any teams. Make sure you're subscribed. Till then.